Let's go to the changing nature of our country, with the Bureau of Statistics showing us that over the last 10 months, they've been crunching all the numbers to show us exactly what's going on in the country as they analyse all that data from last year's census. And they've come up with some pretty interesting findings. Christianity remains the most common religion in Australia, but 43% of Australians identifying as Christian. But that's markedly down from just over 10 years ago, when 61% of Australians identified as Christian. Now, nearly 40% of Australians have ticked the no religion at all box, a teal colour in the pie chart. That's up from 30% in 2016 and just 16% back in 1996. Peter Kurti is Director of the Culture, Prosperity and Civil Society program at the Centre for Independent Studies, and he joins me now. Good to talk to you again, Peter.
Thanks, Chris.
Close to 60% of Australians are religious now, but that's a big number. 40% of Australians identifying with no religion whatsoever. It's virtually doubled over the past decade.
That's correct. And it really would come as no surprise to those who've been following these figures over the last period of time, because religious support in the West has been declining in general, and for Christianity in particular. And so the authoritative voices of the churches has gradually been diminished over time. And so these figures are not really a surprise. But of course, we have to remember that there was a vigorous campaign last year to get those who might otherwise have ticked their religious affiliation in a very non-committal sort of way to tick no religion, and to get that number up, which is what has happened. And the result of that, of course, is that that kind of finding can be used to argue that when laws such as we've had recently in New South Wales concerning euthanasia, when laws such as that want to change cultural patterns and practices come before our parliament, it'll be that much easier to argue that the voices of religious believers and religious leaders count for nothing. So I think there's part of a long game here that the secular activists have been playing.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was a very active campaign, and without that, a lot of people might have ticked religion because they see themselves as culturally aligned with one denomination or another. So there was this active campaign to sort of get rid of, almost protest against any religious affiliation. So that's been borne out in this. And you're right, that will affect the political debate, won't it? People will use that when it comes to debate on social issues, an issue we're about to discuss later in the program, for instance, like abortion.
Well, that's right. And we've already seen how this bit was a vigorous attempt to silence religious voices in the debate about same-sex marriage, the debate about euthanasia, as I've mentioned, and of course the rights of transgender students at faith-based schools. So the idea that religion has a declining importance in Australian national life will, it is hoped by the activists, make it easier for them to get the results that they want. At the same time, it's also very important to remember that while Christianity is in decline, Hinduism and Islam, the allegiance for those two religions, has actually gone up quite significantly over the last period since 2016. Now, Hindus and Muslims form a smaller part of the Australian population, but it would be premature to think that their views can be dismissed and that their views about God count for nothing.
No, I was going to make that's an important point. There's still well over 50% of the population adhere to a religion of one kind or another, and as you say, with those immigration streams continuing and the growth of those populations here, those trends run in the opposite direction. So you can't discount faith in our political discussion for a long, long while to come.
That's right. I think we will have to take seriously the Australians with religious beliefs, whether they are Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists or Jews, because they are as much part of the Australian community. They have views about moral issues and moral questions, and they will want their views to be taken into account when policy discussions are being held about a range of issues. Christianity is, as you've said, is the largest religious group in Australia. Christians are the largest religious group in Australia, and their influence is probably waning somewhat. But God is not dead yet in this great country.
Indeed, he is not. Thanks for joining us, Peter. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris, as always.
Peter Kurti there from the Centre for Independent Studies with the breaking news that God is not dead. No, he or she certainly is not.